Hi, I'm Mike Henry, and this is my Procreate 4.1 demo for the piece I call The Adventures of Grit Beefbolt. So this piece is another one in the sort of recent behavior I've had of pulling out old things that I wished I'd finished and taking them to completion. A long time ago when I was still at Booyah, at the video game company Booyah, we worked on a game that never came out. Officially, I think it came out in Canada, but we didn't launch it elsewhere. And it was these like military dudes, and it had a futuristic bent to it. And this isn't a character from that, but it was a character that was sketched out during the exploration of characters at that time. And I've posted this character in this rough form that you see as the underdrawing here. I've posted that on Instagram, but I never took it further, and I really always wanted to. There was something about the simplicity of this character that I just really dug. So I've always kept the photo around on my phone and thought, one day, I'll never be able to paint the original sketch because it was just such a shitty little photo, but I thought, one day I'll redraw this and take it somewhere and do something fun with it. That's what this hopefully is an attempt at doing. But I at least have fun. We'll see if you dig the actual piece of art. So there's not much thought that went into the design, obviously, because the design was already done for me by me a long time ago, and it had parameters attached to it. So really the only thoughts here were, how do I clean it up? What are the things that are in the original drawing that I'll need to fix, because the original drawing was just a super rough sketch, and what parts of the original drawing do I just disagree now with some of the design and I want to change. The gun, for instance, was done, it's a nonsense gun that I just did really quickly. That's something that I just wanted to keep. Let's keep it a sort of nonsense gun, and let's not be too particular about making sure that it's all straight and clean. You can see I make a couple of decisions that are different with like the actual representation of the shoulder pad. I alter it a little bit, and just some other really small things throughout the redrawing process of this that I just sort of tweak. The only thing that I was really thinking of, and it's sort of one of the reasons why I use old drawings, is I was just thinking about what do I want to do in the coloring process that could be really interesting here, or interesting for me at the very least. So something that I decided on while I was still doing the lines was that because it's got this futuristic thing, I tend to make things somewhat colorful, so I thought let's maybe try to not do that on this one. So maybe when I get to flatting it, I will try to restrain myself in color in general, and I end up doing that. Now you'll see that when I start the flatting process, he's got like a bright green, like turquoise-ish scarf on. That's fine. I threw that in there in that bright color because I knew that it'd be easy to tweak, because in Procreate it's kind of hard to make something, well, it's super hard to make something more saturated once you've already desaturated it. But if you start with something saturated, you can kind of do a lot of things with it without having to just refill in the color. So that was the thought process there. But otherwise I went with just like grays. His skin is just bright white basically, and I wanted to make the shadow for the whole thing red because I wanted to go with like a more blue, greenish bluish highlight for it. Overall, I knew that I wanted to go more desaturated and a little bit more blown out, and that's the angle that I took when I got to the coloring. It's kind of that simple. Oh, the reason I just wrote LOL there is because I had a layer turned off and I redrew the goggle strap like twice. Anyways, I'm gonna shut up now for the rest of the drawing part of this, because the drawing part of this is just me and my fat pencil going through and doing some tight lines. So you can chill out and watch that part and I'll come back in for the colors. come in a little bit earlier than I said because I do one thing here with the lines that I want you to really focus on that I've never done before, and it was a fun experiment. Here it comes right here. You'll see it go by super fast. Okay, and then super fast again. I'm repeating it multiple times so you can see it. There it is again. And one more time again. Now what I'm doing there is I'm doing like a complete bullshit version of some sort of chromatic aberration type trick. All I'm doing is duplicating the lines and coloring them in like a reddish pink, and then shifting them to the left, filling them in kind of a turquoisey green, and shifting them to the right, and just trying to give it some sort of a different flavor than I normally do with the lines. And those are underneath the lines but on top of the flats. Which is, it'll even be on top of the shading, and it was really just kind of a weird thing that I wanted to play with, and then I end up carrying it out through the rest of the piece in various ways. And I'll try to talk about them as much as possible, and when everything's done I'll even zoom in on it so that you can see what I'm talking about if it's not very clear in this video. So here I'm just going through the flat process, as I said before, keeping everything very understated. It's all just grays basically, except for that scarf and his eye, which his eye eventually I do desaturate, and then the scarf I switch to a purple and greatly desaturate it and even bring it down in value a little bit. My color for this is more saturated than what I usually use, light red. It's like a light brown red. And that's because I wanted to go with that color because I'm going to try and go with something that's like a greenish bluish highlight for the whole thing. Now this is all painted with the soft airbrush, meaning this shadow pass. If you're wondering how I get certain things a little bit tighter than other things, that's because I just lasso it real quick and then fill it in, or I fill it in and then I erase away, and that's how I get various shapes in there. So I make my brush bigger when I want something to be really soft, and smaller when I want it to be sharp. And if I want something to be sharp on one part of it and really soft on the other side, then maybe I mask it off real quick and then paint. So the layers that we have at this point are all of the flats, all on their own layers, so that I can do select paint, select clear. If you're curious as to what that is, I link it down below. And then I have the shadow layer that's on top of all of that. And that's all in one layer, that then with the select paint and select clear I go through the whole thing. Then there's the line layer, and then on the very, very top there's the shine in his eye, which is where other shines will also sit. Eventually there'll be more layers on top of that that will augment the overall piece, like a noise layer and sort of a vignetting that I do, but that's it. Oh, and then of course I do a background eventually. So you can see there, for instance, on the metal knuckles, it looks like a mess because I'm just sort of painting, because I'm actually focusing on painting the drop shadow off of those knuckles. And then when I get to the metal, like I just did there, I'll clear it, and then I'll go back in and paint exactly where the metal part is. You can go back if you want to understand that again, just scroll back through it. You'll also notice that I didn't completely flat it. I got the big chunks of the flatting done, but then there'll be certain other things that I go back in, just slightly tweak as I go. And that's really just because I wanted to get to the rendering part quickly, because I was kind of excited about it. And then I knew that because of this methodology, having the shadow on top of everything, I could always go back in later and adjust the flats however I needed to. So after I do this shadow pass, and here we go, you see a bunch of metal texturing going on there, I'll go back in and I'm doing another shadow pass on a new layer where I want to really beef up some of those shadows and give extra dimension to certain areas. With this though, I'm still going through the same select paint, select clear method, because I still have all the same limitations that I do when I'm doing the other part of the shadow. So all of this is really straightforward. That's why I'm not yakking over it. It's just the same process, but thinking about the shadows slightly differently. Now here's where I take like a blue, a bright blue, and I put in that as a big highlight in the center of him just to bring all of the brightness to his face. And then I selected the shadows and erased away. Now here I am with the flats turned off, so you can sort of see what all of those layers look like by their lonesome. And then I'm going in with a bunch of random brushes and just blocking in a background. I wanted to blur a lot of aspects of the background, so there wasn't a whole lot of point in putting a lot of detail in this, although I start to, and then I realize that I want to handle it a little bit differently. So that's what you see here. Now I'm going through and refining this a little bit. I was watching the Hot Ones episode with Jeff Goldblum when I was drawing this background, and that just became very apparent to me as I was watching this. Okay, so now we're going to very quickly start blurring different layers, different amounts, in order to get the look that I want. You'll see that coming in soon. So background's blurred a bit, foreground's blurred a bit, and the ground that he is on is not blurred. That was the idea here. Now I'm going through and putting in the rim light, the bounce light from everything coming up from the ground, which isn't a whole lot, but I just wanted him to pop, so it's a little bit more than it probably should be. And then you can see I did that duplication of the shadow in the foreground as well. Or I shouldn't say the shadow, but the silhouette in the foreground, so that I could get that same faux chromatic aberration going on. And so now there's a noise layer on this, and there's sort of like a vignetting going on, but this is the final piece. Here, let's zoom in really quick and see. I think you can see some of the effect that happens from having the pink line sort of slid to the left and the green line slid to the right. I think that it's kind of cool. It gives it all like an interesting vibe, so I just thought it'd be fun, and it kind of worked out. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this one or any of the other videos, please consider liking, subscribing, and hit that notification thing so that YouTube lets you know that I exist and all that other shit. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are all the places you can find me, except minus a couple because I haven't updated this in a while.